Hello and welcome to the channel. In a bit of a change of pace from my usual content, I wanted to share a roller coaster of a true story with you today. There'll be some laughs, some happiness, some sadness, some suspense, some crime, some loss, and maybe, but almost definitely not, some tears. Yes, this is a true story, but it's also first world problems. It's for entertainment only rather than any long-lasting, genuine grief. Let's begin. I've no doubt mentioned before on this channel that my absolute favourite console of all time is the SEGA Dreamcast. It had so many great first-party and third-party console-exclusive titles that it is truly home to some of my most treasured gaming memories, whether that be inquiring about a black car in Yokosuka on the day the snow turned to rain, racing around Tokyo-to on battery-powered skates, or trying to siphon a stream of mice into my rocket while sending cats into the rockets of my friends. If you know, you know. In the bleak, dying days of the Saturn, the upcoming Dreamcast release felt like a light at the end of the tunnel for the fanbase. As much as I loved the Saturn, there was no denying it had been destroyed by the PlayStation, especially in the West. But that was the past, and Dreamcast was the future. The console was due for release in Japan in November 1998, and everything I'd seen so far in the magazines had me seriously hyped for its release. And standing head and shoulders above all else for me in terms of said hype was the next-gen 128-bit Sonic launch title, Sonic Adventure. Without a doubt, I had never been more into gaming or more excited for anything than I was at this time, for this game on this system. I was in a constant frenzy. I wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. Eventually, the console came out in Japan, and with it the coverage and reviews of import titles started popping up in all my favourite gaming magazines. And the fact that so much of the coverage and the games focused on Japan and Japanese culture made it all even more appealing to me. There was something exciting and exotic about the whole thing. I already had a strong interest in Japan as it was, and this bombardment of coverage turned that dial up to 11. Side note, it was undoubtedly one of the many factors in my life that would eventually lead me to move to Tokyo in 2017. Anyway, I started to notice ads popping up in gaming magazines for various import stores around the UK stocking imported Dreamcasts, and it must have been around December 1998 that I first built up the courage to float the idea to my parents of maybe getting one of these Japanese machines for Christmas? A big ask. My family was not wealthy, and these fuckers were expensive. The answer was a somewhat firm no, but I could sense some wiggle room in there. So I left it for then and went away and had to think about my next approach. At some point, probably not too long after, I remember I saw an in the flesh, as it were, Japanese Dreamcast set up in a local gaming store running Sonic Adventure with its various push start button cutscenes and so on playing on the screen. Although there was no pad so I couldn't have a go, the graphics looked incredible and the console itself was so compact and neat looking. I had to get one. Sometime in early 1999, I believe, I came up with another proposal. I knew I had some sort of ISA account with about £500 in it gifted to me by my grandparents some years earlier, and it was meant for some sort of practical use someday, I guess. I don't really know what the plan was, but I wasn't allowed to touch it. I suspect it was for if I was going away to university or something, you know, give me a bit of cash to send me on my way. Anyway, not expecting a positive outcome, I suggested to my parents that I dipped into the forbidden money, just some of it, although more realistically the lion's share of it, and use it to get an imported Japanese Dreamcast. I can't remember quite how I justified it in all honesty. Can't you just wait until it comes out over here? My dad asked. No, I replied. I really can't. It's worth noting it was scheduled to release sometime in the autumn or fall, if you're an American, and that was like 3/4 of a year away, a lifetime to me at that age. Maybe it's because my parents knew just how much Sega meant to me. Maybe it was because I showed as much enthusiasm for education as Travis Barker does for getting on an airplane. Or maybe it's because they just wanted me to finally shut up about this console. But for whatever reason, they said yes. My joy was indescribable. The words simply don't exist in any language to convey just how delighted I was. Moving forward, disclaimer, the dates are to the best of my recollection. This was a long time ago. So, flash forward to whenever it was. Still early 1999, and my dad and I were in his car fucking off to the Midlands somewhere on a 6-hour round trip to an import games shop called Telegames. I'd called ahead to check the stock and place an order for a Japanese Dreamcast and a copy of Sonic Adventure. It was reserved. It was locked in. It was ready for collection. When we got there, we said who we were and the fellow working at the store plonked the orange and white Dreamcast box on the counter, along with a bulky step-down converter necessary for using Japanese hardware with UK plug sockets. He then reached to a shelf behind him and grabbed a fresh, factory-sealed, immaculate copy of Sonic Adventure and placed it on top. I thought I was going to faint. "Do you need a memory card to go with it?" asked the bloke, gesturing to a VMS, or VMU to us in the West, in a matching orange and white box. Not wanting to take the piss financially, for whatever reason, I said, "No, I'll be fine." For the record, when someone says, "Do you want a VMS?" you say yes. "Are you sure?" my dad asked, looking confused. I knew I needed one, but we'd spent a fortune already and I felt bad, so we left without one. Looking back though, a VMS was a drop in the ocean compared to what we'd spent so far, and what we would soon be spending, as you will come to learn. So my dad would have been fine with a small additional cost for the console to be used properly, but no, being the nice boy I was, I passed it up. Regardless though, I was delighted, with or without the ability to save. The drive back home took an eternity, and I spent it analysing every last detail of the Sonic Adventure disc, case and manual, without understanding a word of it of course, and I thanked my dad profusely for all of this the entire time. Then finally, after 3 agonizing hours, we got back to the house. I ran inside, took a piss, then began setting up my new console. It was so fresh, so slick, so modern. A compact machine, but thick. This was a weighty motherfucker, and it felt like every last millimeter of that light grey console casing was stuffed to the gills with pure 128-bit next-gen power. I briefly marveled at the Japanese language literature / instructions, then I shoved the power supply in, whacked the lead into the back of the TV, placed the disc in the tray, closed the lid, hit the power button, and it didn't fucking work. It turns out my TV only had a 50Hz refresh rate, which didn't work with my 60Hz Japanese Dreamcast. All was not lost though, as it did sort of work on the big TV downstairs, so I got to have a go on it that day. But I say sort of worked, as it would only display in black and white for some reason. Tech heads may know the reason why, I do not, but it was enough for now. So, following a night of my bored parents unable to watch TV while I played black and white Sonic Adventure, the next day, my dad and I headed out to our local Comet, a defunct British electronics retailer, for a new portable TV and yet another Dreamcast-related expense. To avoid any further fuck-ups, we took the console with us, much to the marvel of some of the staff, and we tried a few different models of TV before finding one that worked and displayed the game properly. At the time, neither us nor the staff knew the refresh rate was the issue, so it was very much trial and error. So we bought the working TV, took it home, set it up, and with that, for a little while, things were going great with my dream come true imported console, my little Dreamcast. Through trial and error, I managed to work my way through the Sonic Adventure language barrier okay, and I got along surprisingly well without being able to save to a visual memory unit, or visual memory system, as this was a Japanese Dreamcast. Eventually I was able to beat Sonic's story in a single sit-in, then the next day maybe I'd play up to the point where you unlock Tails, drop out to the title screen and then do his story. When I finished that, another day maybe I'd play up to the point where you get Knuckles, then quit back to the menu and do his story, and so on. You get the gist. It was an insane way to play through the game looking back on it, but I was having a good time. I got as far as playing all the characters through this method, but I never beat the full game like this. But it wasn't a skill issue or even a time issue. It was worse. I never got to beat it. Let me explain. At the time, I didn't give a fuck about school. It wasn't that I was particularly thick, it was just I didn't really have any interest in the subjects I was learning at the time. All that mattered to me was racing home as fast as I could at the end of the day to play my exotic console and beat Sonic's campaign for what seemed like the millionth time. Sometimes with friends, and often alone, it's all I wanted to do. I can't remember how long this went on for exactly, but on one such occasion, I was running home as usual and everything seemed normal. But as I got to the front door, I was able to just push it open without using my key. Kind of like in a TV show or something when the protagonist goes to check on a friend or partner and they're about to find something bad. I wasn't worried about that, as I knew I was always the first person home, and no one else was ever in when I got home. But maybe someone had forgotten to close the door properly when leaving that morning, I thought. Unlikely, but possible? Anyway, I entered the hallway and things just looked off. Drawers were partially open, items were knocked over, and things were generally not where they should be. "Hello?" I said, too quiet for anyone to possibly hear. Something was wrong. I walked deeper into the house, towards the kitchen located at the rear, and upon entering I could see the back door window had been smashed and the door was left ajar. The penny dropped. Not even stopping to think there could be criminals in the house, I ran to my room. I burst the door open to find the place ransacked. TV gone, VCR gone, Mega Drive and games gone, N64 and games gone, Sega Saturn and games. I shit you not. Still fucking there. Make of that what you will. But then, in a real drop to my knees and yell, "No!" moment, my Dreamcast and Sonic Adventure gone. I was devastated. I called the police, I called my parents, I explained what happened. Eventually, a lot of the stuff was replaced by the insurance company, but not the Dreamcast. Their catalogue of replacement items did not cover such exotic commodities. We were given the cash for it, of course, but after a conversation with my dad, he convinced me that as I'd enjoyed the console for a while, maybe I should just wait the 6 months or so for the European release now. It was a big ask. He said that with the extra cash we spent on the imported version that we'd get back from the insurers, I could use it to spend on extra things when the console came out here, such as maybe another controller, a memory card, an additional game perhaps, as when it released locally it would no doubt be cheaper than importing it from Japan. Plus, I'd be able to play the games in a language I understood. I didn't like it, but I agreed. His logic was sound. So ended my brief stint as the happiest kid in the world with an imported SEGA Dreamcast. Obviously, massively first world problems, and this story is for entertainment purposes rather than any genuine lasting upset. But it did suck. Eventually, the UK Dreamcast release got scheduled for September 23rd, 1999, and then, as it got very close to launch, for an additional kick in the bollocks, this release got delayed until October 14th. Anyway, finally on a cool October evening, I went to my local Virgin Megastore and picked up a pre-ordered Dreamcast with Sonic Adventure, Sega Rally 2, a VMU, and an extra controller. In honesty, I'd enjoyed being on the DC hype train for a second time around. This time for a Western release. And this time it was with friends too. No end of mates of mine had Dreamcasts, probably in part because I never shut up about the fucking thing, but it was nice picking up the consoles together and then swapping games and so on. I thought the European Dreamcast cases looked cool too for the games, although I definitely preferred the orange swirl on the Japanese console than the EU's blue one. And with that, after the longest time, I was reunited with my Dreamcast and my beloved Sonic Adventure. After another agonizingly long train ride back from Virgin Megastore, I finally arrived home and set my new console up. I popped in my shiny new Sonic Adventure PAL disc like I'd done so many months back with my Japanese system. I hit the power button, and it didn't work. I had a faulty copy of Sonic Adventure. There was a bad batch, I believe, when the console first launched. So I played Sega Rally 2 in a grump instead that night, before going back to the shop the following day for a working Sonic Adventure. Oh, and what about the bellends who burgled my house, you may be wondering? I won't give you too many specifics in case he figures out who I am and comes back and kills me, but he was a serial burglar and left loads of prints around my house and other houses he hit in the area. He also left a lot of blood in one property where he cut himself while doing some crime and eventually got caught and sentenced to 5 years in prison. We even got some of our stuff back, including my Mega Drive, as it was found at his address. I hope he was eventually able to turn his life around. And as for my Japanese Dreamcast, I never saw it again. I don't know what became of it. Maybe someday someone will leave a comment below this video saying how they bought an imported Sega Dreamcast from a dodgy geezer in a pub car park back in 1999. But until that day, we will never know. Thank you so much for watching this video. It was a little different to usual, so if you liked it, let me know, and maybe I'll do a few more tales like this one. I've got a few more lined up, but admittedly probably not many as good as this one. Anyway, I'll throw it over to you. Have you ever been involved in a crime? I don't know what to ask here. I guess, have you ever been in a similar situation? Did you enjoy my story? I certainly didn't at the time. Do you have my fucking Dreamcast? Whatever you want to talk about, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button as it helps me out a lot, and if you're new here, consider subscribing for high quality evergreen, Sonic and Sega videos. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.